Good evening. We want to take the opportunity to welcome you to this live stream event. We kind of debated what to call this. I thought about calling it Conversation with Tracy, but that didn't have the same ring as a counselor conversation. So that's what we're calling this tonight, and we've been looking forward to having the opportunity to share with our church family and some others that might be watching this evening. We recognize that we're in the midst of a really crazy time in our world, and so one of the things that I thought about in terms of pastoral care, how to take care of our people, is giving them some tools that they could utilize in their own family's life that would potentially be helpful for them as they go through this time. So anyway, I want to take the opportunity to introduce to you Tracy Fields. Tracy serves as a counselor. And Tracy, if you don't mind, tell us just a little bit background-wise for context's sake so everybody knows a little bit of your background and why it is that you are occupying this chair tonight.
I can do that. I've been blessed to have been a school counselor for the last 20 years. Before that, I was blessed to be a teacher in the elementary grades, middle school grades, and as well as I've worked in daycare. I've worked with kinder care and daycare students, so I feel like I have a wide range of experiences with young kids and with older kids.
Sure, that's great. What a good background. And I know that you have lots of insight to bring to the table related to what these guys are dealing with, some of their emotions, how they're feeling, in ways that we might be able to help. Let me share with you that are watching that we're going to not only have this live stream tonight, but also this will be broadcast at a later time as well. And if you're interested in receiving the information that you put together, you can contact our church office, and our phone number is 816-628-5693, or you can email us as well. And we would be happy to get the information in your hands that you're going to be sharing with us tonight. So having said all of that, let me go ahead and jump in, and let me ask you a question about all of this as we get started. What are some of the biggest, because there are a lot, but what are some of the biggest challenges that you see families facing in the midst of this time right now?
I think there are several. What I keep saying, it's finding a new normal. It is, we're all finding our new normal, whether it's we're working from home as well as raising kids at home, trying to help them with schoolwork. It's just finding a new normal and what works for you and your family. And the other thing to think about is that where, I kind of call it come and go. Lots of times we were come and go at home. You know, we'd come home for a few minutes and we'd do something, and then we'd go and go to a practice or go to a game or whatever we're involved with. And we're not coming and going right now. We're pretty much staying where we're at.
Sure.
And trying to handle things from home, which can bring a whole lot of different things with it.
It's kind of like, you may have seen this, but somebody said the other day, who would have imagined gas prices being this cheap and we can't go anywhere? They said, it reminds me of my high school years.
Exactly. Another thing I think parents are still struggling with are just trying to help kids with schoolwork. So where they've had teachers with them 7 hours a day to try to help with that work, now all of a sudden we don't have the teachers right there with them. They can zoom in. You know, there's some contacts that we can have with them, but we're not at school with them. And so we're not making them sit in their seat, do the work, and parents are having to kind of take that on. Or some of my students' cases, older siblings are having to take that on for younger siblings, which could be an added responsibility.
Sure.
Keeping students motivated. You know, the work that we're sending home may or may not be fun. I don't know. But just keeping students motivated when they're sitting looking at a computer all the time, that's a struggle. It's a struggle for me. I like to talk to real people.
Right.
And on the phone or on the computer is not always what I enjoy doing. Another thing I think some of our families struggle with in Kearney nationwide is just having enough resources. We've got parents that are out of work. We've got kids that we have the highest number of kids that we provide backpacks or back snacks for, weekend meals for, than we've had in a lot of years. So just this year alone, when kids were at school, we were trying to help with resources. And so trying to meet those needs while they're not at school can sometimes be tough, and parents are having a harder time. I was in the grocery store the other day and heard a gentleman say, my kids eat a lot. They're not at school to eat, so they're eating a lot more. So parents are paying more for groceries. They may not be going as many places, but they still have the resources. They still take care of home and the meals and that type of thing. I think another thing our kids struggle with or our families struggle with is not being around the loved ones or not being around their close friends or not getting the hugs
Right,
that you'd like
sure.
to have. And that's a tough one for some students. Now, some doesn't want to touch anybody,
Right.
but sometimes it's nice to have that hug or that pat on the back or just that person right there with you that you know is going to be there. And they don't always get that now. I mean, you know, if it's not somebody in their house, then they're missing others. It might be a special grandparent or an aunt or an uncle. I think sometimes some of our younger kids are scared by seeing all these people with face masks.
Sure.
I don't have one on tonight, but boy,
Right.
in the store I do.
Yeah.
When I'm at the store, I'm sure I'm wearing a face mask, sometimes gloves, carrying the sanitizer with me. And when kids are seeing that, I think that's worrisome to them.
Oh, sure. It's very different.
Another thing that I think is happening in the homes is maybe too much togetherness. I know that we might have experienced that a little bit. In fact, we're opening the pool a little bit earlier
Oh, good.
so that we can social distance a little more outside. So just managing the conflict that comes with having to decide who gets computer time now, who gets it later, just trying to manage all of those, you know, those little nuances
Sure.
that go on in a house. I think another thing is maybe reaching bigger, but you know, those things that have been planned for a year, weddings, graduation is a big one on our mind right now. You know, all of those things that are annual that we've been planning for so long, there's uncertainty about whether they're going to happen or not.
Sure.
And if they are, when they're going to happen, what's going to happen with them, how it's going to be done. Our school district, I think, is doing a very good job of number one, just being cognizant of what's going on, but I also think that they're doing a very good job of communicating with the Kearney families about what their intent is, what they're looking at. Right now, we've moved graduation to June 7th, I think.
I think that's right.
And then I heard Dr. Nicely say in a meeting the other day that we have a contingency plan if we can't do it in January or June. So I think that, you know, just how do you handle those big celebrations? But along with that, how do you handle Easter? You know, everybody's Easter was different. Where we had big families, normally, you know, big families that gathered around one table, they weren't able to do that.
Right.
So how do you still make, when you have little children, how do you still make them enjoy those moments that are so special with family, with traditions?
Right.
You know, if we can't get out and get what we need or need to, you know, if we can't be with who we want to be with. And then the last one that kind of worries me is domestic violence. And I know that, you know, you've spoke about it from the pulpit, and I appreciate that, but we have it. It happens in Kearney, it happens in Kansas City, it happens. And so my concern, and I know the numbers are showing that domestic violence is going up, and so how do we keep our kids and our families safe?
Yeah, and there are probably countless things that go along with that as far as the rationale behind that, everybody being in the same room or the same couple of rooms for such a long period of time. Undoubtedly, a lot of people, unfortunately, will, you know, turn to alcohol as an example, thinking that's going to kind of calm their nerves, whatever, and that has such a negative effect on families across the board. And so, yeah, lots of reasons for that to be the case, and that's so tragic. It really is.
It's tough.
So what can people do in the middle of all of this to, you know, to take care of themselves? Like, what are some things that they can do, you know, for their emotional well-being? We can talk obviously about, you know, spiritual well-being, but their emotional well-being as well during all of this.
Sure. So in the counseling world, we've started calling that self-care. Kearney has partnered with Truman MedCenter and talking a lot about trauma-informed care, and that's looking at kids that come to us that have been in trauma situations, whether it was, you know, an abusive family, or whether it's, you know, sudden death of a family member, or, I mean, things just changing in the world. This, probably looking back, we will think of the pandemic as being a trauma time.
Sure.
And so we've partnered, we've been working with our teachers, with our counselors, with our administration, about what is being trauma informed. How do we help our kids if, you know, they're not going to learn when they're sitting in the classroom if they can't think about being in the classroom. I mean, if they're worried about what they're going to go home and eat, if they're worried about, oh, you know, what shape is my dad or mom going to be in when I get home, those types of things, they are not going to learn. So we've got to work through that and trying to do that. But we've been blessed to have some good training on that. And one of the things they talk about is self-care. And it's so important that during this time we're practicing that self-care, that we're practicing self-care of ourselves, and then we're helping others learn what self-care is and how to handle that. So I've written down some ideas that I'd like to share with you. Self-care for adults, it can be anything from just 10 minutes to read a book. I have found that since we're all in the house together, that reading a book is kind of hard. It's hard to get away, to find that 10, 15 minutes just to sit and read a book. Or listen to relaxing or enjoyable music. Take a nap. Take a walk or exercise. Try to talk to a friend or a family member that you haven't connected with in a little bit. You know, maybe it's calling your mother or calling an aunt or an uncle. Definitely, and this is not school related, but definitely take that quiet time. You know, take that time to spend with Jesus and start your morning the right way. And that's one of the things that the pandemic has given me, is that I've been able to go back to doing that because I have a little bit extra time. I don't have to get in the car and get Emory somewhere and then get home. And so I've been able to get up, start my morning with a cup of coffee and Jesus, and it's been wonderful. And so I think that just sets the tone for the whole day.
It does.
Another thing is, you know, pick up a hobby that you enjoy, something that you've wanted to start or something that you have already done, and maybe put those, in the quilting world, we call them UFOs, unfinished objects. And so pick up that unfinished object that you may have started, whatever it is, a quilt, a crocheting, woodworking, whatever it is you enjoy, but pick that back up and do it. The only caution I give you is please don't do it if it causes you more stress. You know, if you're a perfectionist and you can't get the corners correct, then please, you know, don't pick up something like that. But something that you enjoy, that you can look back and go, oh, I had a hand in this. I helped do this. One of the other things I've talked to my family about is lunch break from electronics. So we don't have them at the dining room table. That's become a no-no, the evening dining table. But you know what? Just 30 minutes from electronics, because you're getting information so fast and furious thrown at you in so many different ways that sometimes it's overload. It overloads me, I know. You know, I just think I get one email answered and then 20 more come in. And so having that break to say, okay, I'm just going to breathe, I'm going to talk to real people, I'm going to go walk outside or whatever, but just that lunch break from electronics you can give, you know, and you can afford yourself 15, 30 minutes to do that.
Absolutely.
The world's not going to fall apart if you lay it down for that long.
There's no question that the connection, and when we appreciate technology, we're the beneficiaries of that in so many ways. But one of the challenges I think that people have today, and it plays out in a situation like this as well, because we're so connected to electronics, I think that does more to amp up some of the anxiety that people feel than what anybody would recognize, because we're never off. The phone is always ringing, and I'm not speaking from Sinai on this, you know what I mean? But we're always checking the phone is ringing, or something's going on, text messages, etc. So yeah, that's a big one. I think that would be a big deal. You
know, and the research shows, our teens have dealt a lot with bullying. That's been a big issue in Kearney School District, and some of the studies show that it's the technology, because students feel empowered of a night. That person's not sitting right in front of it. They don't have to say it right to that person, but they can post it for the whole world to see, and it's okay. It's not a big deal. But when that one person gets it, that's when it becomes hard, and that's when it becomes hurtful. And so in the past, where you or I would have to say it to that person if we wanted to say something.
6 feet tall and bulletproof in your parents' basement behind a keyboard is kind of the way that works, huh? Gotcha.
So some things that you can do, self-care with kids. So kids aren't going to, they're not born knowing how to take care of themselves. Obviously, this is something that they're taught, but it's something that parents can teach them or model for them. So if you say, hey, mommy's going to sit here and read this book for 10 minutes, you know, I'm practicing self-care, I need a little bit of quiet, then you've modeled for them that you care enough about yourself to take that time. And that's what's important for our kids, to see us modeling that. And then if for some reason they're melting down or they're struggling with something, for us to be able to say, hey, why don't you try this, or try to redirect what they're thinking, or you know, get their mind off of what it is. So some coping skills that I think of for kids are just reading. which I love to read, so that's a good one for me. Breathing exercises, and I'm going to talk more about those in a couple minutes. Label the feeling. So we've got a feelings chart at our house. Most good counselors do. I mean, you can find them on the internet. But just a feelings chart. Hey, how are you feeling today? Just to kind of get an idea of where they're at and what's going on. 2 weekends ago, we sent our high school students a survey and listed about 25 feelings and said, hey, let us know how you're feeling. You know, click all that apply. And there were some that clicked all the negative ones. There were some that were a few negative and all good. But it was it was a way for us to get a hold on or to get a handle on without seeing them face to face.
Right.
Hey, how are you doing? And so finally finding a feelings chart, either online or if you need one, I can find one and get to you. But just kind of getting an idea of how they are or what they're doing. Positive self-talk. Now that's not one that I'm the best quilter there ever is. That's not what I'm talking
This
about.
sounds like an SNL skit, right? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough,
yes,
and doggone
yes.
it, people like me.
That's close.
Close, yeah.
But it's, hey, you know, I'm okay. We're going to be okay. This is going to be okay. Let's come up with one positive thing that's happened today. Let's come up with one thing that I want to work on today. What's a goal that I have? So it's more of that positive talk than this is boring, I can't do this, this is stupid, I'm angry or whatever. Let's try to find that positive way to spin it. Playing a game often gets their minds off of it. And in fact, we did a Zoom meeting with my niece 2 weekends ago and played a game with her on Zoom. So she had her stuff to do, we had ours. But it was a way to interact. It was silly.
Sure.
I'm not sure who won the game, doesn't really matter. But it's just that we were able to connect with her and have a little bit of fun, just trying to, come up with something creative. Yoga is another way. Now, I'm not talking about meditation. That's not where I'm going.
Right.
But just some simple stretches, just to get kind of out of your mind those negative thoughts. And again, focus on something positive or just some movement. Kids need to move. And so if they, if they can move their neck or stretch a little bit, sometimes that just helps a lot. And then the other one I love is art, is just having an art project or having them, draw a picture. How are you feeling today? Show me in a picture. So younger kids are really good and can use those coping skills, but again, they have to be taught them. Some other self-care for kids might be taking a break. If they're trying to do something, build a Lego tower, and they're getting really frustrated. Hey, let's take a break and, have a cheese stick, have a popsicle. Let's do something just to get their mind off of it,
Sure.
and then they can go back. Try to help them do their favorite things. What is their favorite things? Teaching them how to relax. Most of us know the exercise where, okay, let's close our eyes for a minute, and, what do you think you see to your left? What do you think you see to your right? Those types of things. Or put your hands down, what do you feel? Tell me how you feel and describe it. So kids are really, younger kids especially, using the 5 senses are a big way to connect with them and to let them kind of learn about themselves.
Tracy, do they, and you may get to this a little bit later on, but do kids, even teenagers, do they take a lot of their cues from the adults around them related to this?
A lot of them do. Younger kids, yes. Older kids, not so much.
Okay, good to know.
Older kids have seen how their parents have handled it, but they've also started to see how other families handle it,
Sure.
how other students handle it, and
Okay.
so a lot of our teens and middle schoolers take their cues from friends
Okay, so more of the
outside,
peer and, okay, very good.
outside the family. Where was I at? Oh, just enjoy some of the people around you. Now, Nurse Lori and I were talking about this a little bit, Nurse Lori at the high school, and she helped me find some of the nursing information that I'm going to share later. But what she said is that, like her grandson lives right down the road from her, and she does watch him. She's his daycare, so she does get to see him. But we've got, I also have a friend whose wife is a doctor, and right now his grandkids aren't getting to come over to the house like they used to. And that's hard. That's
Sure.
hard, not, for him and the grandkids.
Sure.
So maybe pick up the phone and call. We've got, I just talked about putting the computer down, but call, we've got FaceTime. We've got ways to connect that you can still see face to face. that might not, that aren't going to endanger them. They're
Right.
Not going to put them at risk.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so in looking at older kids, looking at middle school and older kids, I'm a part of American School Counselor Association, and so they've posted some information for, again, self-care, for things to do during this COVID time. But some of the things that they talk about teaching, and this takes a teaching moment, is teaching a deep breathing where you breathe in for the count of 4, hold it for the count of 7, and then breathe back out for the count of 8. I use this a lot in my office. When kids come in so upset or really angry, we do a couple minutes of breathing, and that calms. That is just, for whatever reason, it's a calming thing. You're getting oxygen to the brain, and students then are able to get kind of a handle on themselves, and you can go on and do whatever else you need to. So it's called Breathe to Relax, but like I said, it's just a 4 count in, and then a 7 count hold, and then an 8 count letting it out, just blowing it out, like blowing all those troubles out or getting all that anger out. There's some grounding exercises, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I talked about senses a while ago. And so, think about, say, or list out loud or on paper 5 things you can see. What are 5 things you can see right now? What are 4 things that you can feel? What are 3 things you can hear? What are 2 things that you can touch? And then what's 1 thing that you remember tasting or sounds good to you, something like that. Dr. Parker mentioned this earlier, but a lot of these things we're going to have available. So if you're at home fast and furious taking notes, please know that I've got this written down, and so I'll be happy to share this with you, so it's not so much later or while you're trying to listen. Another thing is just imagery. Imagine your safe place and your peaceful place. So I have said for a lot of years that my happy place was in my pool in the sunshine. A couple of years ago, my husband built me a sewing room that has a lot of windows. I'm deciding that my happy place has to do with sunshine and that radiant heat. It's what it has to do with. So now I say that my happy place is in my sewing room, and I can do it all year long. But just finding that place that you feel really comfortable, maybe connected, and for lack of a better term, grounded. Where is it that you just feel good sitting? You know you're safe, you know you're okay, but just where can you be? And then describing that to somebody helps. We talked a little bit about positive self-talk, positive affirmations. A really good one for Christians are Bible verses.
Absolutely.
Just make that your mantra. Forget what the one was to this morning. I read in Jeremiah, and I wrote it in my daily planner because I thought this needs to be my mantra for a little while. I can't remember the reference, but it's where Jesus is saying, or it said that you are, your whole heart, or Jesus will listen to you when you give him your whole heart, when you share your whole heart with him. And that was a bad paraphrase, I know. But anyway, I thought, boy, that really hit home with me, because there's times that I'm going to give him part of my heart, and there's times that I want to keep it and work on it, and I don't want to share it. So, like I said, those things hit home. So just find Bible verses that really mean a lot. And
there are a lot of things even that you've mentioned tonight that that do have, and I want to be careful to mention this, they really do even have, for believers, some spirituality in terms of their meaning. As an example, sort of thinking about positive things. Well, Paul the Apostle tells the church at Philippi, whatever is good and lovely, etc., think on these things. And man, we all need that from time to time, there's no question. Or even what we're talking about in the big grand scheme of things with this particular question, the self-care. What does the Bible teach about that? It says, love your neighbor as yourself. And so we can't take care of other people properly
until we take care of
ourselves properly. So there's good spirituality, good biblical wisdom behind a lot of what we're talking about.
Right. Another thing I encourage, both middle school teenagers to do is some journaling. And it can either be with prompts or it can be without prompts. It may just be, hey, today is what I did. This is what I did. Or, hey, this is how I was feeling today. Or, here's the drama I got into today. sharing something like that. But what I've also found is if you just do a kind of a bullet journal where just a couple of things to jog your mind. My prayer journal is a bullet journal. When I journal Bible verses, it's kind of in a bullet form. But kids, if they write it down, they get it out, and then it's not so bothersome.
Sure.
So that's kind of what
That's
I found.
good.
We've even done exercises before where if a student's really mad at another student, we have them write out why they're mad. So if a brother's mad at a sister, have them write it out why it's bad. And then, let them rip it up. Don't show it to the other person. It's not about making the other person feel bad, but tear it up, and you've gotten rid of it. You've thrown it away. It's kind of a physical thing that you've done to get rid of that emotion.
Very good.
Okay, older kids, probably because I've been at the high school the longest, I do worry about teens a lot. I worry about the influences that they have,
Right.
From the music to the friends they're hanging out with, to the things they think it's okay to do.
Right.
So I do worry about them a lot, and I do worry that they don't always remember what the self-care things are. So I think it's at that time, because I think they're taking their cues from other kids who maybe are not showing self-care. So I think it's at that point in time that parents may have to stop or step in and say, hey, we need to take a minute here. We need to get away from this for a little while. So some of the things most of you know I have an older niece, and so she takes a lot of bubble bath. That's one she learned from me. And in fact, our water bill has went up immensely because she's taken a lot of bubble baths recently. But that's something that soothes her. She was able to soothe with that. And so when she's having a bad day, she starts it with a bubble bath, or she goes in and it's just her relaxation time. Again, journaling, participating in activities that you enjoy. Now, I know that our track team cannot be on the track and field, and that's what they enjoy. But I've also seen all sorts of videos where coaches have been posting driveway workouts. Or, so in this point in time, it may take some doing and it may take some creativity, but you can find things to do that you enjoy doing that will either improve a skill that you're trying to improve on or just for enjoyment. I'd like to say that I'm a basketball player, but
Yeah, me too, but
I grew up, I can't. So listening again, teens can listen to that soothing music, they can journal. I can't tell kids at school this, but I love to mention, read your Bible and journal and just get into the Word, because that's where the foundation's going to be. And that's where you're going to find your comfort and your peace, I feel.
Absolutely.
Another idea is to focus on the future. If we can get students focused on the future and start coming up with a plan. So I've been talking to some juniors recently, or going to be juniors, and so what I've been trying to talk to them about is go ahead and start looking into colleges. There is nothing wrong with getting on Google and Googling what colleges there are that maybe have a degree that you're kind of looking at, or maybe have a rowing program because you want to go to school and row. Looking for something that is a catch for you, and just start investigating that. It's never too early to start looking at colleges. And then, once the pandemic's over and we can start getting out again, maybe make some college visits. It's just not too early to start that, but to start looking at the future. What are the steps that you have to take to get to where you want to be? Goal setting is another good one. Look at where you're at now. Where do you want to be a year from now, or what do you want to have gotten done a year from now? Where do you want to be 5 years from now, and where do you want to be 10 years from now? Another thing that hit home not too long ago is I think most of my family and most of my church family know that I'm getting ready to retire this year.
Yes.
I've been blessed to do this for 30 years, and it's time. But again, I was trying to do it on my own and tried to figure out what I was going to do after I retired, and it dawned on me the other day, think you maybe ought to ask God?
Yeah.
I bet he's got a plan, and he'll
Novel
share it with
idea,
you
huh? Yeah.
if you just ask him. So about a month ago, that popped up in my prayer time, and I was really trying to figure out what I was going to do beforehand, and lots of thoughts were going through. Nothing was sticking, but just when you start making a plan, be sure to include Jesus in that, or ask Christ to help you guide you in it. There are tons of things that families can do together to self-cope. One of the things that we've talked about just recently was doing some community service. We have an older gentleman that lives next to us, and so when it stays warm for a couple of days, we're going to go he's got tons of trees in his yard, so we're going to go pick up trees out of his yard and just put them over on our wood pile and get them out. He didn't ask us to. There's no reason,
Sure.
that we would have to. But it's just a community service that we can provide in our own neighborhood, but it's outside of our house, it's getting outside of our heads and our families, and it's doing something for somebody else. And that always makes students feel good when they can do things for other people. Exercise as a family, if there's 5 of you in the family, Dad gets to choose the first day what the exercise is, Mom the second day, and then on down the line. And so the kids have fun with it. They see the family doing that, and I know you've all heard that exercise releases serotonin, and it makes you feel better and makes life a little happier.
And watching golf, that doesn't count as, okay, sorry.
Maybe if you're up practicing your swings or something,
right.
Then maybe.
All right.
But just watching, I'm not sure that.
Probably not, yeah.
I already talked about a family game night. We Zoomed with my niece, like I said the other day. So just come up with a family game night. Pick a night and say, okay, Tuesday night's going to be family game night. Thursday night might be the night that you teach your child how to cook something. Maybe, grilled cheese, or depending on the age group, of course. But try something new. Make one night a try something new. Kearney School District is doing a Spirit Week, and so Monday was Makeup Monday, and so they are asking you to tweet out, kind of what's going on in those Spirit Days. So if nothing else, get on Kearney School District and see what each day is, and try to follow along with that, and then you can share that in a tweet. The next one's probably one of my favorite. Well, I've got 2 more that are probably my favorite, but just those dinner conversations. When I was a kid, and it's been many years ago, but that was my dad's rule. You were home for dinner. Didn't matter if you had practice, didn't matter what was going on. We were sitting down to eat as a family. And boy, do I appreciate him for that.
So good.
And so that's one of my favorite things, and that's one of the things that's happening in the Fields household now, is that we are sitting down for a family meal. We may be scrambling to get the meal on the table, but we are sitting down for a family meal. We're praying together, and then phones are put up, and we are visiting with each other and learning about each other, and just reconnecting again. And so sometimes that's hard. Sometimes everybody's sitting at the dinner table, and you look at each other and go, okay, what are we going to talk about?
Right.
We've talked about everything. So there's tons of things that you can do with that. One is the would you rather questions. And you can Google, in fact, I just did this the other day, you can Google it online, and they're age-appropriate ones. I looked at the ones for kids, which I thought was fun. Would you rather stuff marshmallows in your mouth or suck on a pickle, I think it was, or something, So 2 very different things.
Not much of an option there.
Yeah,
but anyway.
but just kind of fun things to think about. And like I said, they're online, it's free, but pick 2 or 3 of those for every night when you're sitting at the dinner table, and I can guarantee you that some of those are going to springboard some conversations. Then questions that you can ask. What's your favorite Bible verse? I'm talking fast, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
What's your favorite, I'm getting excited, this is fun stuff.
That's good.
What's your favorite Bible verse and why? What's the meaning of it for you? What's one positive thing that you had happen today? What's one thing that you could work on for tomorrow? List 3 things that make you happy. Sometimes we've asked Bailey and Emery that, and I'm just surprised as all get out what they say. Sometimes it's like, oh, I didn't know that.
Right.
And so sometimes you can just learn some really fun things. Some things about this time. What is it that you've missed during quarantine?
Sure.
What is it that you want to do? Bailey and Dawson have started a list of what they're going to get done during the quarantine and what they're going to do afterwards. Now, one of the first ones is go eat ice cream in Excelsior Springs.
There you go. Dairy Bee?
Yes.
There you go.
Yes, that's one of the first ones. They tried calling the other night, and of course they're not open.
Right.
So, they've got to make a list, as a family. What do we want to get done while we're here at home? We drove by Lowe's the other day. They have been so busy. It's all of those honeydew projects that everybody has time to do.
Trying to catch up on all those. Yeah.
But I was like, where's the social distancing there? They need to stay away. Another thing is tell about your favorite person and what makes them special. What is it? Anybody alive? Anybody from history? Anybody? Who's your favorite person and why? And again, where can you be? There's all sorts of questions that you could go through. Another thing that I think is interesting, we haven't managed it in our house yet, but is a mandated quiet time. From 3 to 3:30, everybody has to have a quiet activity to do. Whether it's taking a nap, it's reading a book, listening to some soft, soothing music. But just, again, a time, especially if everybody's so fast and furious in the house, sometimes just having that mandated quiet time. It could be from 7 to 7:30 before kids head to bed. Maybe it's a way to getting them quieted down and getting them ready to go to bed. I know for little ones, for primary kiddos, we would suggest that at the daycare often, is that, have a quiet time. Start the reading earlier. Start
Sure.
something quiet just earlier on. Talked about hanging up chore charts. Everybody, we're all living in this house together. It's probably going to be messy from time to time.
Sure.
So how do we take care of each other and help so that mom's not having to do it all or dad's not having to do it all? And just teaching them that, everybody's a member of this family and let's get started and help together. Keep a list to keep organized. Sometimes that's not easy, but again, just those bullet journals, just a piece of paper. Here's what we want to get accomplished today. Sometimes just seeing it in writing makes it happen more than in your head. And at my age, it's in my head and it's out before I can even get it written down sometimes. So sometimes it's really good to get that written down, and then you've got that written reminder. There are some apps that are recommended by the American School Counseling Association. One of them is called Calm, and the other one is called Happify. I love that one. Happify contains some games and activities to reduce stress, and then strategies to build resiliency, and then ways to encourage the positive talk. So as I've talked about some of these things, and you go, how on earth do you do that? That app is one good way to get on. It's been vetted by the American School Counselor Association.
Okay.
I've looked at it a little bit. I've got it downloaded. I just haven't been on it a lot.
Sure.
So those are two good ones that are really good. Another idea that I had that I'm actually working on at home, and my mother's going to watch this eventually, so I'm hoping it's not until after Mother's Day that she does. When I was teaching, which again has been many years ago, one of the activities that our students had to do was produce a living history. They produced a book, but it was a living history information. So students were asked to take 28, 30 questions and go interview an older adult in their lives, be it a grandparent, an aunt or uncle, somebody that they would want to write about, that they thought would have an interesting story to tell or would be interesting. And so at that time, I interviewed my grandma, and she's deceased
Sweet.
now.
Yeah.
And so I have, for 20 years, been going to do something with that I haven't done. And so I've had the time that I have started working on her story, and Bailey's going to help me, and that's actually going to be a Mother's Day gift for my mom.
Wow.
So, I mean, something as special as that. Mother's Day's coming out, or coming up.
Right.
You're probably not going to get out to take mom to lunch like normally happens. Dads may not be the best cooks in the house.
Understatement. In my case, anyway, understatement.
We were talking the other day, Larry hasn't cooked for us in a long
Yeah.
time. So what's something special that you can do for a parent, a grandparent, that's different than what you've done in the past? And, having kids sit down and interview their grandparents or interview their whomever that they want to, and then create the story for them.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And again, we keep coming back to some things that have sort of biblical overtones. The idea of honoring our parents and honoring older folks.
Right.
That's a tremendous way to do that, because they have the right to hear those stories, and they have the right in some situations, like when you were talking with your grandmother, to tell those stories, and they ought to be heard. So that's awesome.
And it's been fun to go back and
Good.
to remember that. One of the things that I haven't said, and it's just, I think it's such a counseling technique or counseling part of the Bible, is just listening to your kids. I mean, just sitting down and listening to them. And maybe while we're home in the pandemic time, maybe that's the time to do it. Talk to them about, what their goal is, what their focus is. Sometimes just listening, there are kids that'll come into my office, and I know it's that way with all the counselors in the district. We really don't have to say anything.
Mm-hmm.
They just
listen.
need to be listened to.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
not all of our kids have that. Or, if I was thinking earlier, if you know of a teenager in another family, or that, maybe there's turmoil, just call them and say, hey, how are you doing? Reach out to them.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you won't get a word in edgewise.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sometimes you're just going to be sitting there listening.
Right.
But that is so important, and our kids need to know that they're always going to be listened to.
Yeah, and in some ways, let me think if I can say this the way that I want it to come out. Our kids really shouldn't have to get our attention. We ought to be looking to give our attention. Did that come out right? Does that make sense?
That came
And
out
so
right.
because we're the adults, and so we ought to be looking for those opportunities to be able to listen to them and to hear them. I was thinking, Paul says,
Yes.
and it's a little different contextually, but fathers, do not exasperate your children to wrath or to anger. And I think about some children that grow up in homes where they're always vying for the attention of a parent. That would be exasperating. Now, I don't know that that's what Paul has in mind there, but it certainly stands to reason that would be a situation where a kid shouldn't have to work so hard to get the attention of a parent.
Right. And did I mention that during that quiet time, the TV probably should be off?
It's good.
Because when you mentioned, it made me think. I know that some of our kids have a hard time getting parents' attention.
Right.
Because there's something on TV, golf match.
Yeah. Uh-oh. Now I'm under conviction. So, my kids are grown and out. So it's
Hallmark movies in our
Right,
house,
yeah,
you
there you
know.
go.
So, so just taking the time. I've had a hard time working from home, and I imagine many of you have, because there's a lot going on in my house while I'm there, and I want to be a part of that, and I want to be able to talk to them, but yet
Right.
I need my focus to be
Sure.
on what I'm supposed to
Sure.
be doing. And so just wanting to give that attention is
Yeah.
going to be important.
It's just very different these days, for
It
sure.
is.
Well, Tracy, this has been fascinating, and really do appreciate. We've got a lot more to deal
Oh,
with.
okay.
I know that we're going to talk about, as an example, next time we're going to talk about how parents can speak to their children about this in a way that demonstrates to them that it's a big deal, but not in a way that would put undue fear in them. And so we appreciate the opportunity to talk through these things and look forward to having a conversation about this again. And so I'm going to go ahead and lead us in a word of prayer. And thank you so much for your time tonight. And thanks for the time that we're going to be able to spend talking about this further. And I want the folks that are watching this to know that, again, this material is available. You can call our church office or email us, and we'll be glad to get the material to you. And certainly hope you'll take us up on that. There are a lot of things that we've talked about that, it's not a situation where it has to necessarily be a Christianized kind of thing.
Right.
I mean, teaching a child how to catch his breath so he doesn't lose his cool, isn't necessarily,
Right.
Rooted and grounded in Christian tradition, although we could find a proof text to maybe
could.
explain that, I'm sure. But there are ways that we can use this material to be of help to our neighbors and our friends. And I was thinking as you talked to one of the great things, and I hope people don't lose this, and I'm sure that they won't because it's such a great gift from God, and that is the ability to laugh. Man, to just be able, whatever
Tell jokes.
we can talk about that brings some humor, that's so helpful. And that's biblical. A merry heart is good medicine.
Right.
And so anyway, we're grateful for that. So anyway, thanks for being with us tonight. And let me pray, and then we'll call it good for the evening.
Okay.
Father, thank you for today, and thank you for Tracy and for her work. Thank you, Lord, for all those who are taking care of the needs of our kids. We're grateful for them. We pray, Lord, that you will continue to help us as a nation. God, we pray that you will continue to help literally our world as we go through this time of unprecedented change. We pray that people will turn to you and look to you for the answers, even in the midst of all of this. And we pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. And I'd shake your hand, but we have to do elbow bumps or something like that. So anyway,
I don't want to
thank
get
you
in
all.
trouble.
Yes.